Hi guys, I'm back. I would like to talk to you today about a new product that's about to be registered in South Africa, and we are going to look at having it available here in Eswatini. It's a snake venom detection kit. So I'm just waiting for my slideshow. There we go. So this is new, it's just being developed. So what they say is if a human, an animal, a dog, a cow, an elephant has been bitten, if you use this test, it will tell you whether there is envenomation and whether you need antivenom. Sorry, this is taking a while because there we go. All right. So it's been developed by BAT, Bioscan, and it's gone. All right. So these are the people that have helped develop this test. All right. So we are incredibly grateful. I think it's a phenomenal project. The new packaging looks like that. It's slightly different to the one that I've got now, so they are improving their product or their packaging. David? There we go. All right, so what do you find inside this little box? There's a test device that looks very much, if anybody here has diabetes and you check your sugar, so, or pregnancy test or COVID test, it looks very similar to that test. So it has a control line, which always has to be there, and then the test line. So inside this box you get your test device, a little dropper to take the drop of blood. You get the activating liquid. There's enough in here for approximately 3 bites. So you first take a drop, no, let's start with this. Then there's silica gel, obviously to keep everything nice and dry. A packet insert with everything you need to know about the test, as well as an alcohol swab, which you should use before you prick your finger, or your dog, or your cow, or whatever the case may be. So it's got a 2-year expiry, or it's 2-year shelf life. And as long as you don't take it over 30 degrees Celsius and you don't freeze it, all should be good. I need to say that we have not tested this product ourselves yet, but we are looking forward to, and we will be doing so and collecting data and sharing it. So as I've said to you, it's similar to the glucose test. It detects venom, so you can decide before you load your dog into a car whether you need to rush to the vet, even if there's a dead snake, was the dog envenomated, or if you have a high value cow, 50,000, 80,000, some of these cows cost, you can test your animals to see whether you need to load up and go to a vet. Like Jessica said, it's incredibly expensive. And as a farmer, to lose an animal is very costly. It works on all African snakes apparently, as well as 4 snakes in India. The boomslang, they tested it and it showed up a positive after somebody was bitten by a boomslang. So that's exciting to know. WHO has had a look at it, and we are going to try and assist them with data. I just want to bring up an example to the doctors who are still here. I had a call 30 minutes ago, and there was a snakebite patient at a particular hospital, and he said that he was not well. He had been bitten by a mamba, and said that his symptoms included joint pain, and he had a bitter taste in his mouth. So she decided to give 8 vials of antivenom because she heard it was a black mamba bite. So once we had discussed the case, we then realized that she hadn't been, or the patient hadn't been envenomated at all. In fact, he hadn't even been bitten. So that's 8 vials of antivenom wasted. Okay. So for anybody that's insecure, a remote clinic, most certainly it can come in handy. So this is what it looks like. You get your control line, you get your positive line. This particular slide was for a boomslang. So it did show a positive result. But once we start using this, we need to try and work out where is it going to be practical. Who's going to get the most use out of this test? Syndromically, we should be able to determine if somebody's been bitten by a neurotoxic snake, cytotoxic hemo, but people who are not as familiar with snake bite, it most certainly can come in health. Some of the private hospitals don't see a lot of snake bites, so they don't have the experience, and they'd rather err on the side of caution and give antivenom. But this can save us a little fortune. So I would recommend vets, because it is difficult with dogs. If you're going exploring, looking for diamonds in the middle of nowhere, farmers, if you're going on safari, in every household, why not? If you are a pet lover and you've got dogs. The cost is going to be about 300, 350 emalangeni per test. We just need to try and figure out or work out some of the logistics, or not logistics. What about mild bites? Don't attack me, Chris. What about mild bites that don't qualify for antivenom? Even a puff adder bite can be mild and you don't need antivenom. If it shows positive, are we going to give antivenom unnecessarily? The boomslang requires a monovalent, so that is a specific antivenom for that species. So if it shows positive, I'm afraid, or I'm concerned that the doctors may then use the polyvalent instead of the monovalent. So these things are the things we need to talk to the developers about. I'd love to have a conversation with them and try and understand it better. And then let's try it. There's no harm in trying this. In fact, we're actually very, very excited about it. It can save us a lot of money, unnecessary bites, and it can also assist when there is a very serious bite like a mamba or a snouted cobra. Before symptoms present, you can do the test, give antivenom before there's descending paralysis and there's a need for ventilation. But like, once again, we look at the syndromic, we use the syndromic process. This is how we determine whether somebody needs antivenom or not, but I have a lot of hope. I'm incredibly excited about it. I think the panel is very excited about it. It has great potential. It would be lovely if this test can show us what the species is, so that you know exactly what you're dealing with. But I think this is a phenomenal first step. Thank you very much. My time is up and Chris is going to tackle me.
Lindelwa, where's Lindelwa? Lindelwa, cytotoxic bites. On the program, everybody will see at this time right now, Lindelwa is talking about cytotoxic bites in humans. Where did you not give your presentation to him? Then we are in the mix. Here you go. He's going to get it up now.
You change slides here, but it takes a while. There's a bit of a lag.
Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dr. Mema, and so many speakers have already spoken about what really happens at Antivenom Foundation. One of the key things that we do, as Thea has just spoken about, a new product is research. You can never get to having a new product, a new antivenom, anything new, without having knowledge about what is behind. I'm here to talk about cytotoxic bites. In October 2010 to March 2022, we conducted the research on cytotoxic bites. So it was a way for us to understand the different bites that we have. The highest, or rather the snake that is commonly rescued in Swaziland is the Mozambican spitting cobra, which is part of the snakes that cause cytotoxicity. I'm sure we've all seen that. That's the first one. I don't know, it's this one. And the other one is a puff adder, which is the other one. So, like I mentioned, from October 2020 to March 2022, we conducted the study. We had 125 patients who were enrolled into the study to better understand cytotoxic bites. And out of the 125, 70 of them received antivenom. When Dr. Praise made his presentation, he mentioned that they normally give antivenom to only 10% of the patients. So we know that being bitten by a snake doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be given antivenom. So in our case, because our patients already were bitten by the venomous snakes and they required antivenom, most of them received antivenom. And a few of them didn't receive antivenom because they were at a point where it wasn't going to benefit them, or they were bitten by snakes which antivenom doesn't really work on them. Out of the 125, 31 had necrosis, of which it is something that we worry about. And findings from that, he moved. No, this one is okay. So, you know, one of the mottos for snake bite management is to save the limbs and save the life. So I'm on the limbs. If there's cytotoxicity, there's a possibility of amputation. And we're trying to move away from that, because if you're amputated, then you've got a disability and your daily living is impaired. We talked about a Mozambican spitting cobra and a puff adder. Both of them cause progressive swelling and pain. But a puff adder also has hemotoxicity. So that is why we see ecchymosis in the bites that are caused by a puff adder. So in a way, you get to know which snake bit a patient when you see the site. So findings showed that males are the ones who are mostly affected by bites, and children, or rather students, are the ones who are mostly affected by bites. So it is something that we all have to try and put a foot forward on to have our kids protected from bites. So imagine a school-going kid who no longer has an arm, who no longer has a foot. It is something that we have to try and up the prevention part of it. And walking was the activity which had the highest number of bites. And as you see from there, the lower limb has 89 cases out of the 125, of which the feet are mostly affected, as walking is the problem. This is just, I'm sorry, I didn't give a trigger warning. So this is just pictures to show how cytotoxicity progresses. As you see the first picture, it's at 3 hours, just 3 hours, only 3 hours. The second one is at 15, and the last one is day 31. The agony that this child had to go through to get to that. And on day 31, they had done a skin graft already. It is quite scary. Yes, we do agree that these actions had been taken for that hand to progress to all those stages. A tourniquet was applied. If you remember, it was mentioned that not all bites require tourniquet. And as much as the patient presented in hospital early enough and got antivenom early enough, they still went through all that agony. We have to try and do a lot on prevention. So in the study, we also came up with adverse effects of antivenom. Out of the 70 people who received antivenom, 34 had adverse effects, which is something that we worry about. And healthcare workers have voiced out that they have a phobia to give antivenom because of those adverse effects. So the study was conducted when we were using SAVP. I'm not saying the current antivenom doesn't have adverse effects, but it has been noted that it has lesser adverse effects. We are currently conducting a study on adverse effects of antivenom, snake antivenom. We are looking all the way to when we were using SAVP to date to try and see whether we're moving to the right direction or not as a country. Please move to the next slide. So this is how it looks. The blue part is the current antivenom that we're using. We've used it for 18 months, so it is something worth noting. And the red part is SAVP. Next slide, please. The next one. Okay, with the 18 months that we've used antivenom, we've only had 1 case of desaturation, 5 cases of hypotension, and 6 cases of tachycardia and 3 of urticaria. It is worth noting that 18 months, and this is just the few cases that we've had of really that severe cases of adverse effects. Thank you. It is worth noting that as a country, we are trying to move to the right direction. I'm sorry, it has been going on about time. We are trying to move to the right direction as far as antivenom is concerned. If we've moved to having that many adverse effects to fewer adverse effects, it means there's something that is happening okay. If I may say, I don't know what you guys think, but I think there's something there. Thank you.
Thank you, dear. Arnu? Could you please stand up and come and give us your talk? I think you'll have to stand close by here then, because it needs to be close to this thing. So, a snake walks into the bar. Bartender says, well, how did you do that? That's bad, eh? It's so bad. Oh, yeah, spider. Yeah, well, good.
What do spiders order with burgers? French flies.
Good afternoon. I'm going to tell you a little bit about lessons in life. Basically, where things have gone wrong, where they shouldn't have gone wrong, and what we can learn from it. Now, if we just look at that first picture there, we've got a kid that's got 3 tourniquets on his foot after being bitten by a puff adder. If that stays on there, they are going to amputate the foot. So we try to avoid things like that. Now, we all know what puff adder bites do. We've just been through the whole thing on cytotoxic envenomation. And I got a phone call from a farmer. His son had been bitten on the foot by a puff adder, and they were taking him to the hospital. They needed advice. So I said, "Are you sure it's a puff adder?" He said, "Listen, I've been farming for 40 years. I know what I'm talking about." Yes, it was a puff adder. So they took him to a hospital, and while he was at the hospital, the foot started swelling. Now, if you look at the algorithms that we have, swelling above the ankle within 1 hour would require antivenom. So we gave him, I suggested they start with 8 vials. I know the booklet says 4. I haven't had much success with 4. I prefer 8. So we started with 8 vials. By 8 o'clock that evening, the swelling had progressed to above the knee. So I suggested another 2 vials of antivenom, which they then duly gave him. 10 o'clock that night, the swelling had gone up to the mid-thigh. Suggested another 2 vials of antivenom. By this stage, we had 12 vials, which on a small child is a lot of antivenom. And it was not, the swelling wasn't stopping. So eventually, at 2 o'clock in the morning, the swelling had gone into the trunk, and he was transferred to a bigger hospital in Johannesburg. When he got there, they sent me a photo, and this is what his foot looked like. Now, that looks pretty typical of a puff adder bite. Tia, you wanted to see the puff adder bite. Tia? You said it wasn't going to be blue. Look there, it's blue, blue. So there you can see how it had spread. They'd made the mark at 6 o'clock, and it had been spreading up and up the body. There you can see the next mark that was made was just above the knee, and already then it was blue, it was hard. The child obviously was crying, was in a lot of pain, and they said, look, the doctors are getting ready to operate on him, and this is what his foot looked like. If you look there, you see the blisters. At the back there's a blood blister. On the front, there's a normal fluid-filled blister. And this is basically 12 hours after being bitten. So yes, it was a serious bite. And I went through to the hospital to go have a look. Because if you look at a puff adder bite, it looks like this. And if you waste time, it can get a lot worse. So you need to investigate how bad is the foot. Is their blood supply compromised? Does he need a fasciotomy? All those sort of things. Now, if you've got a patient with a bite on their foot, you need to give them proper elevation. This is proper elevation. What we do is we put on 2 pillows. We tell them, put your foot on the pillow, and it's not proper. That's what it looks like. It's got to be at about 25 to 30 degrees. Keep it like that, legs straight, and that then reduces the amount of swelling along with antivenom. You can't do that as an alternative to antivenom. So this is a fasciotomy that was done after a puff adder bite. The kid was bitten in Chobe in Botswana. It took about at least 20 hours to get to Johannesburg. They ended up doing a fasciotomy, which is a cutting where they cut through to the fascia of the muscle to relieve the pressure, and as a result get blood through to the foot and back. Otherwise you can actually have a limb which is going to not have enough blood supply and will eventually become amputated. And we try to avoid that with small children. But I saw this swelling was not progressing, so the surgical intervention was called off. I got there, I spoke to the grandfather, and the grandfather showed me a picture of the snake. I'll tell you what it was later because that's what makes it so important. The child was in pediatric ICU. If any of you know, with the number of kids getting stolen, you do not get into a pediatric ICU. But if you have a clipboard and a pen, and you walk to the door and you ask them, could you please open, they open. They're not supposed to, but they did. And by this stage, I went to the kid's bed. That's what his foot looked like. It was terrible. I said to his mother, listen, do not allow any operations. Just leave him as he is, because I needed to see it myself. I said, leave him as he is. This child is going to be fine. And they said, are you sure? I said, if your kid's good enough, he'll take part in the Olympics. She said, but seriously, they said he's going to get gangrene. I said, there's nothing wrong with your child. Have a look. So that's normally what they do, is they debride them. They remove the top of the blister. This takes place about 7 days after the bite, and that leaves the flesh underneath to then grow through. This guy's finger, within 2 weeks, he was doing dishes. So it does grow very quickly if the wound is kept clean. And this is what the child's foot looked like 72 hours later. There's no necrosis whatsoever. All the blisters had burst by themselves, and the foot was fine. Here you can see the other side. All those big blue blisters had disappeared, and a week later, that's what his foot looked like. I told the mother he would be walking out there in a week's time. She did not believe me. A week later, the kid hobbled out of there, so he left. And it was quite simple because the father told me it's a puff adder, which is right in the top there. The photograph that the grandfather showed me was at the bottom. That's a night adder. We do not use antivenom for night adders. They generally do not cause bruising. They do not cause blistering. They do not cause excessive swelling. So I have no idea why this child reacted that way. But going on what the father said, I was advising them on antivenom, which I should not have done. It was incorrect advice, but maybe it did help, and that's why the child didn't have any necrosis. And what we've learned from that, the lessons learned are, number one, identification. You need to make 100% sure. There are people like us who are on National Snakebite Advisory Group, TIAs here in Eswatini. You get hold of her and you say, here's a photograph of a snake, here's a picture of a snake, here's a piece of a snake, what is it? And we don't need to know all the snakes, we just need to know the ones that will kill you. In her case, it's 5, with us, it's 10. So if we find a piece of a snake and it doesn't fit in any of those 10, we go, well, don't use antivenom. So evaluate carefully before surgery. These doctors were in a hurry to operate on the child, and it was totally unnecessary. You could just puncture it. We've got 2 minutes. Wow, okay. So when in doubt, stick with the syndromic approach. This is a boomslang bite. I'm going to rush it in 2 minutes. Right, this is a guy who was bitten by a boomslang in Eastern Cape. As you know, the boomslang causes a lot of bleeding. And he tried to capture the snake, and the snake bit him. So I'm going to read you exactly what he gave me, what happened at the bite. So around 12 o'clock, he was called to remove the snake. Previous people had obviously tried to kill it and had injured it. The snake turned around, bit him in the thumb when he managed to get it out. And he was very close to a well-known hospital. He went to the hospital within 10 minutes. They put him on a drip, and they monitored him. They tested the blood to see if it's clotting, and by 6 o'clock, which is only 5.5 hours later, they said, no, it's fine. His blood's clotting, he can go home. He said, but sometimes it comes quite late, and they said, well, then just come back tomorrow. At around 8 o'clock that evening, he was in the shower, and he saw that the blood was still dripping from the bite site as well as the drip site where they'd injected him. And we made arrangements for him to go to another hospital. He went to that hospital. He went in. He was admitted immediately. They did a 20-minute whole blood clotting test, and they sent it away to be tested in the lab. And within 20 minutes, the doctor said, I don't need the lab tests. I promise you this is positive. They then gave him 2 vials of antivenom. He immediately had a massive allergic reaction with anaphylaxis. He says, I remember vomiting violently, and it felt like I was burning up, and then I lost consciousness. My next memory was much later, being tied to the bed and having a tube in my throat. I also remember having bad hallucinations. I assume the hallucinations are from pain medication. I've never heard of hallucinations as a result of boomslang, but it may be because of small blood clots getting lodged in parts of the brain. So the next day they did a whole blood clotting test again, and the blood was still not clotting. They then got another 2 vials of antivenom, flew it in from Cape Town, gave him that, and he started to recover. Later, when he was stable, he was transferred to another hospital, where he spent a total of 4 weeks in the ICU. When he was feeling better and more conscious, he had to learn how to walk again. He had 3 sessions a day, but he also developed blisters on his lips, which formed a crust. That was his bite, and that's what he looked like. So he had all these blisters, which are not recorded for boomslang. He had them on his lips, forming a thick crust, and sores in his mouth and all the way down his throat. The crust had to be cut loose from the beard, and he also has some memory loss. He still suffers from hallucinations to this day. He was discharged and was told that his kidneys, liver, and lungs were probably permanently affected, and he can no longer run, pick up heavy things, or even catch any snakes. The total bill for the bite was just over R500,000, and he had to pay 58,000 Rand out of his pocket because the medical aid would not cover it. If they'd given him the antivenom at the first hospital and not discharged him, none of this would have happened, and everyone would have been much better off. So what we learned from that is worm-song evaluation. 1 second. Worm-song evaluation, very important. If somebody's got a scratch from a worm-song, I promise you they've been bitten. They don't give dry bites if they've scratched you. Number 2, do not discharge for 24 hours. Number 3, prepare for anaphylaxis. Don't wait and then run around looking for adrenaline. Have everything next to you. And further complications are never ruled out. In his case, it was a lot of complications, and they just transferred him to another hospital. So those are 2 of the lessons in life which we get from snakebite. In the one I messed up, in the other one I didn't mess up because I did get him back into hospital. But these things happen. If you deal with 500,000 bites, then these things will happen. So something to think about. Not all snake bites are the same, and every single one could be different. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arno. Sarah? Yeah, I think you must jump up here, please. That guy lying on that bed there with that crusty bearded face reminds me of the Chuck Norris joke. This one's good, though. This one's really good. So, a cobra bites Chuck Norris. After 3 to 5, I think it was 5 days of suffering, the cobra eventually died.
Afternoon, everyone. Yay! Okay, so I have how long? I have some minutes to convince you guys to come over to the dark side. 15 minutes. One Health and snakebite. What is One Health? You can't answer, but does anyone know what is One Health? One person, come on, encourage me. Holistic health. Shall I get the lavender oil to come over? Okay, all right. So, my slides aren't changing, help me. Which one do I press? The big one, okay. Okay, so One Health is where we bring human health, animal health, and ecosystem or environmental health together, and where those guys intersect is One Health. And for those of you that are in the healthcare world in the audience, you may have come across this in Eswatini in the context of antimicrobial resistance. Infectious diseases are often looked at in this way now. However, snakebite is one of the poster children as well for this case, because it's not just humans that get bitten, it's our domestic animals, and then as Jess presented earlier on, it's what their role is in the ecosystem, and how are they, and what is attracting them to the landscapes and such. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those, but I'm going to skip through a lot of my slides because a lot of it has already been covered. So let's get started on humans. For those of you that have done the medical management one or the general one, it's all you've probably heard about. But our statistics, we've got some idea. We're probably one of the few countries that understand fully at a national level what is our snakebite burden in the country. Those that come to hospitals and health centers. We don't yet know what the community burden is by doing community-based surveys to see what is the real burden. If our hospital and health center data reflect the actual burden of snakebite. So in other countries, it's very underreported. People don't come to the health facility and therefore do not get counted. But in the Eswatini setting, is that also the case? We don't know. However, we do know who comes, and then we don't know yet what the psychological impact long-term is for snakebite. Last year, thanks to the UK mission in Eswatini, we were able to host the first snakebite survivor meeting, where we brought all those that had been affected by snakebite, whether that is having survived it or if they'd had a family member affected by snakebite, to come together and to better understand the challenges that this community goes through. I have, touch wood, not been bitten by a snake bite, and not been bitten by a snake. So I don't fully appreciate and understand what that means. And whilst you have that community together, then you will be able to come together and overcome some of those challenges and better be able to advocate for better treatment and care. Thanks to the EU funding and the UK mission in Eswatini, we've been able to train our snake rescue volunteers that you have heard and have met out there. And these guys have been the backbone for a lot of our prevention work. And I'm going to present some of that too. We don't yet know what the social impact of snakebite is, and we don't know what the economic impact is either. The catastrophic costs that a family may incur by coming to try and get treated for snakebite. So, don't panic about not being able to see the numbers on the axis. I just want you to look at the pattern. You've got the rise and the fall and the rise. This is 3 years of data. Okay? We have the winter time, our snakebite cases drop, and in the summertime, they peak. November, December, January, that's our peak time. And then I think in the month of July, if I'm not mistaken there, that is our quietest time. It's never zero, but it is a lot lower. Again, don't worry about not being able to see the number. When we disaggregate for gender, I want you to see that there's a clear line, the bar here, where we have the highest cases, and that is in the 10 to 19-year age group. 28% of our snake bite patients fall into that, whichever gender. Okay, 28%. That is not reflective of the population of Eswatini. We are a young population, but we're not that young. Okay, so when you add that to the 0 to 9-year-olds, that's 40% of our snake bite victims are 19 years and younger, which was why we then worked with, again, the UK mission to go out to schools to teach children how to be snake safe. Just like we learn how to be car safe or road safety, how do you become snake safe? And all of our, the map on your right, the blue is it's a map of Eswatini, and in the blue you have the high elevation, the mountainous areas, and then in the red, the low elevation. And then everything in between is the gradation. And you can see those little dots on there. They're every case of snake bite. So they're all over the country. It's not a low-felt problem. It is a national problem. I like this particular table. I hope you can see the numbers. And this divides the patients by their occupation. The majority of our cases are in the students, hence the 0 to 19, but also the unemployed, those that are in low-skilled labor, so in the labor market but without skills, as well as retirees and those that are too young to be at school. I like this because it also shows who's not getting bitten. Maybe snakebite would be a bit different. I don't know. So what does this all mean? Well, we've had better treatment. We've had the anti-venom banks. We've had looking at better anti-venoms and safer anti-venoms to use. We've had new guidelines with treatment protocol that has been developed with the Ministry of Health and WHO in Eswatini. Those were launched at the end of 2021. And then we were the first country in the world to make snakebite notifiable. In November of 2022, our then PS made snakebite notifiable. So that means every health facility, whatever level, clinic level, etc., is obliged to report snakebite immediately. We've used this data to build the risk models, and I'm not going to dive into the hectic mathematics of this. You'd be happy to hear. But what we've done as a result of that is develop a bit of a risk map. You may have seen this in the context of COVID. You've got your red zones and your green zones and such like. The green zones are lowest risk. It's not zero risk, it's lowest risk. But a lot of that country, we can see our country is very orange and red, pretty high risk. This is the risk of bite, and this is the risk of poor outcomes as a consequence of bite. I live in the red zone. That's my motivation of getting involved with the snakebite world and with the EAF, because I want to change this map to being green and yellow and not having it so red and orange. I could just move house, but you know. We've published this 2 years ago. So if you are interested in understanding more of the epidemiology of snakebite in Eswatini, then this is freely available. It's not behind a paywall. So that's the reference there. So prevention is better than cure. So as I said, thanks to the UK mission in Eswatini and the EU, we've trained over 100 rescue volunteers now who are trained to ID, and you've met them out. And what they've been doing is going out and rescuing our snakes. And we've got them on the road with bicycles to be able to get to some of our more hard-to-reach areas quickly. And what these guys do is that they also go out to our schools. Sorry, just to say that, forgot. This is data over 4 years. You see that drop in 21 to 22. What happened then? COVID, and prevention started then as well. So we were like, oh, this is amazing, fantastic. Prevention's working. Yes, but could it be COVID? And also there was lots of rumors that there wasn't any antivenom. So we really weren't sure what was happening. The following year, the numbers went up, but snakebite became notifiable. So it wasn't that our prevention strategy is not working, it's that it's because in 22-23 there was no EAF didn't have, the facilities didn't have. So the lack of antivenom wasn't the barrier. People are going, our prevention teams, our rescue volunteers are getting the message out that if you get bitten, go to the health facility, you will still survive, it's okay, and we've made it notifiable. And so this data is still continuing, and as we're just cleaning up the data from 23-24, but this is the critical, this is where we say that the snake rescue volunteers are the heart of what we do. This is because they're the ones that are speaking to our communities. We've developed materials with UCSF and, I can't remember, and that was the cartoon. And then we've got a song that is freely available on our website. So do feel free to go and look at that. And we're, as I said, speaking to the public on what to do and what not to do. And then we've prepared the, and then we've been speaking to the preschools all the way up to the high schools. There is no age, minimum age until you can engage with a snake. We're going out there and we're speaking to everybody. Because you catch them young, it stays. I still remember growing up in the UK and it was look left, look right, look left again, stop, look, listen and think, and then cross the road. So we want to do that with the kids, with snakes. Okay? So let's look at the ecosystem. What is the ecosystem services? Jess already spoke a lot about that, so I want to talk about what we do with the land fragmentation work that we've been doing. Professor Aramanajam spoke about it earlier when he presented. So when our snake rescue volunteers go out, they send us a pin drop and a photograph of the snake. So we can positively ID that this is definitely a snouted cobra or whatever, and also the location. We've got the exact point. And then we've taken all of that data together over the last 4 years, as well as historical data from museums, surveys, and what Tia had been doing before the foundation, as well as the other citizen science-based work. Don't panic about not being able to see the numbers here. I just want you to see all the different species of snakes that we have caught as a result of this work. And what do you think is at the bottom there with the species at the bottom? The Mozambique spitting cobra. Our top 10 snakes are those there, bottom being the highest, and then, I know it's a bit logistically awkward, but the Mozambique spitting cobra being the most, followed by the boomslang, followed by that brown house snake, followed by the python, and then the, sorry, did I say boomslang? I meant black mamba. So Mozambique spitting cobra, black mamba, brown house, python, and then boom. They're the top 5. Okay? They're the scientific names. When I work with the ecologists, they won't let me use the English names. So. I have to stick with all the Latin names. All right. This is the months that we have been collecting. So September, because that is the first of the summer here, the first day of spring here, till the end of August. And when did you see this pattern before? With our snakebite data. It's following the same pattern. So that's when the snakes are out and about. What we're doing here is we're looking at the near misses. Yeah, these cases would have been a bite if we'd not gone and removed the snakes. Okay, so it's mimicking what we see when they have been biting. Where are they located? The big gold one in the middle is the savanna, and then the red one is in the settlements. You can't get two very different types of landscapes. So the snakes are in a lot of different types of land uses. So how can we make our how can we make our areas better as we change from, let's say, agriculture, let's say we're turning bush into agriculture for sugarcane or bananas. Is that different? If I plant bananas, am I going to have what species of snake? If I plant maize, is it going to be a different type of snake? Or is it just going to be less snakes or more snakes? I don't know. So this is the questions that we're asking from the data that we've been collecting. Okay. This is a map of Eswatini based on land uses, and on the left is the snakes that we've reported, and you can kind of see them all located in this area here, where there's a lot of human activity. So we thought, is it all just a function of human activity? Because if there's a human, they see the snake. If you don't have any humans, they can't see the snake to report it. Makes a lot of sense, right? So we did it by random, and we found that actually the data does spread out, okay? I'm not going to, for the sake of time, go into this, but if you are interested, come and speak to me afterwards. But we then looked at it as a relationship with human, and actually we find that it's not. Densely located human populations, we're finding very few snakes, and in the areas where there's fewer humans, we're seeing a lot of snakes. And is that because if you're in the middle of Manzini and Bunu Mall, you're not looking for a snake, but if you come over to Gebeni, where I live, where there's a lot of bush, maybe you are going to be looking for a snake, because there's tall grass and there's all sorts of things going on. Is that the reason? We don't yet know. So we're interrogating the data that way. I just wanted to touch on prey and predation. Really hoping that this video is going to work. We've got an activity that we do at Mbeluzi Game Reserve with researchers from Wageningen University in the Netherlands, and they're looking at birds and nesting of birds. And this is one of the videos that they caught on their cameras. This is a black mamba, and he's busy in the, just hanging out, doing his thing. And there's a nest at the top there, and he's trying to see if there's anything to eat there. They've got a number of these videos of bums coming in and eating the eggs and various other animals that are in these, well, not animals, but chicks and things that they're eating. So this is what we're trying to figure out, is what do these guys eat? And what would they prefer to eat? Because we also know that just next door is the sugarcane, and we find them there. But we're not finding birds nesting in the sugarcane. Right? So what? When you request funding, your donor wants to know, so what? This is all nice data, but so what? Well, we know that as humans change the land, snakes are moving onto the land. So there seems to be an increased risk of humans encountering a snake. Our prevention program to date as EAF has been each one teach one, go out to the community, speak. But can we use the data that we have to do better urban planning so we reduce the attraction to snakes on where we live and where we work? And what does that look like? I don't have the answer to that yet, but that's where we're going with it. Right? And I'm not going to go through this, but if you are interested in the snake bite in domestic animals, we've done that. So again, for the oh, sorry. Can I go back? How do I go back? Do you all know how antivenom is produced? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let me then move over. Okay. Sorry. I presented the animal one with the animal team, so that's why I'm flying through these slides. But I wanted to end with these two slides, and that is we can't change what we can't measure. Tia keeps always telling me this. So we've got to be able to collect the data to make a change. So we know we don't yet know what is the real human burden of snake bite in Eswatini. We've got the hospital and health center data, but we don't know how many people are not coming. We are looking into the adverse reactions of snake bite. That was some of the data that Dr. Lindawa was presenting earlier. And to look at the numbers behind that and see, is it just a feeling or is there real objectivity there? We're looking at what is the economic value and impact on the work that we do. When we when we have our snake rescue volunteers out, what does that mean? And then can we do decentralized models of care? Instead of having the patient come to the health facility, can we give antivenom where the patient is and then bring them to the hospital rather than having that time delay, because time is tissue. Or time is life. So, One Health approach. I know I didn't go into the animals, but you should have been at the animals bit. Can we use a multi-tiered prevention approach to how we do better to get to zero? Not zero deaths, but maybe even zero bites. I'd like to end with thanking our sponsors, the Wellcome Trust in the UK, Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine, and the UK Mission in Eswatini. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Sarah. Spider-Man. Did you give your stuff in?
No, it's good. It's
Wow.
waiting. There you go. Waiting. Watch. Aren't you going to introduce me? Remember the amazing.
All right. The amazing. Just what? Remember the amazing.
Yeah, the amazing.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please, maybe stand up. Maybe stand up for the amazing Jonathan Lime. Yeah.
Am I the last speaker? There's one more. So thank you very much for hanging in there for the last minute. You see, everyone's coming back. They heard the amazing. They honestly thought that they were going to miss out. Okay, fantastic. There we go. Okay, so you've heard about snakes the whole day. We've heard a bit about dogs and cats and wild animals. Now we're going to get to the real interesting stuff, and that's the spiders and scorpions and centipedes. So as a bit of introduction to myself, I wrote Scorpions of Southern Africa way back in 2003. It's the best-selling book on scorpions of Southern Africa of all time. Woohoo! Thank you. You know how I know that? Because it's the only book we have. There is another book out, but it's only Scorpions of South Africa. So you guys have been excluded. So I kind of run around speaking at conferences. I kind of fly the flag for venomous animals. And today I'm going to be talking about, the spiders, the scorpions that you need to be kind of looking out for, and just giving you a little bit of kind of education when it comes to these creepy crawlies. So as I mentioned, it's spiders first, scorpions, and then we'll talk about centipedes, because it seems to be a big thing, right? Is there any man who's turned into a woman because they've been bitten by a centipede? Anyone? Looking at Chris, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to be wrapping up, and there's some free stuff at the end. So thank you very much for attending. If you've got any questions, come chat to me afterwards. So I think spiders and scorpions, they kind of really touch very deep down in our imagination, right? Do you know what rain spiders are? Rain spiders are those big spiders you sometimes find in your house. Do you know what's worse than lying in bed watching a rain spider crawling on the ceiling? I'll tell you. Lying in bed watching a rain spider crawling on the ceiling when the lights go out. Because where does the spider go? It goes into the deep, dark corners of your imagination, right? And it becomes bigger and hairier and scarier and more venomous. And you think it's plotting this evil plan to sneak down and bite you on your toe and paralyze you and wrap you up in silk and feed off your mortal remains. And when the light comes back on, you know what happens? The rain spider's thinking the light's back on. Our imagination can be our worst enemy. If we don't know something, we seem to fill these gaps in our understanding, not with the facts, but something that aligns to our values and beliefs. Do we all use Google? All right, so when you search for something, you get 10 versions of reality back, don't you? So which one do you click on? It's an interesting question. Do you click on the first one? Because that's sponsored. Someone has got, there's a reason why they pay for that advert. Okay, do you click on the most factual one? You actually don't. You click on the one that aligns to your values and beliefs the most. So if you're afraid of spiders, you're going to click on that story of this lady who lives on a farm who was bitten by a violent spider, and 2 years later her leg fell off and died. That's the story you're going to click on, and there is a story like that. If you're someone like me, you'll be clicking on biotechnology coming from spider venom, or how awesome spiders are, because spiders are awesome. So today I'm going to be busting a few of these myths that we think. I think of all the creepy crawlies, spiders are the most feared. There's just something about them which makes them like really scary. We're lucky to have about 2,500 named species of spider in South Africa. I don't know how many you've got in Eswatini. I just haven't seen any kind of research. They occur everywhere, which is pretty awesome. It almost like Mozambique spitting cobras just like occur everywhere just about. But spiders are in your house, they're in your bathroom, they're in your garden, aren't they? They're underneath your braai, they're everywhere. And I think that just kind of speaks a lot of how we should know more about them because they're very familiar, but we don't. They occur in just about every ecological niche. There's some spiders in the world that live underwater, for instance. Within South Africa, we've got spiders that live in the intertidal zone. So when the water comes in and it's high tide, they're under the water. How awesome is that? And all spiders except one group have got venom glands. Are spiders poisonous or venomous? There could be a prize. Yes, sir. They are venomous, that's right. If you have a look under your seat, you might find some chewing gum. Right. Okay, we'll leave the prize to the end. Okay, so they are venomous. Can you eat spiders? You could if you really wanted to, but I wouldn't recommend it. I really, really wouldn't. So there's 4 medically important spiders. We call them 4 medically important spiders, but they're actually groups of spiders. When I talk about button spiders, we can split them into the black button spider group and the brown button spider group. There's 4 species of black button spider, there's 3 species of brown button spider. But the common denominator is that they've got pretty similar venom and they've got pretty similar natural history. So we can lump them under these common names and it still makes a lot of sense. So let's have a quick look at what the spiders look like. First, all right, so 1% of spiders are medically important. How's that? Just 1, in fact it's less than 1%. It's 0.76% of spiders are medically important, and all the other spiders are not medically important. What do we mean by medically important? It means that if you get bitten by the spider, it's probably a good idea to go get professional medical help. As we've heard with puff adder bites, only 10% require antivenom, right? So there's a huge range when it comes to the symptoms, but there's still puff adder bites. We see the same thing with spider bites, and we see the same thing with scorpion stings, and I'm going to touch on that right at the end. So not all spiders are medically important. Who's afraid of spiders here? And be honest. Okay, a lot of you aren't being honest. I can see that. That's fine. I will let you raise your hand in your mind so you don't come out as someone who's afraid of spiders. It's a very common phobia. You know, we're all afraid of something. Just last night I had nightmares. I dreamt I was in the front row of a Justin Bieber concert. So we're all afraid of something. This is what our black button spiders look like. They don't have that red hourglass marking underneath. Only the females have been implicated in bites because the males are much, much smaller. All right, so the females are larger. They've got large fangs, okay, but they have small fangs for that spider, but they've got larger fangs compared to the male. Do we get these in and around our houses? How do you identify a black button spider? What's the feature? I've actually already mentioned it. It doesn't have that red hourglass marking, But I think that's a good example of a fact that if everyone knows the same fact, it must be right? Because that's common knowledge. But they actually don't. None of our black button spiders have that red hourglass marking. Okay, as you can see from here, there's no marking underneath. There's a bit of a red stripe on the back, and there's some kind of white blotchy markings on the front of the abdomen. Okay, you've got two species of black button spider which occur in Eswatini, which you won't be able to differentiate the different species, so I'm not even going to go there. Traditionally, we've had SAVP Latrodectus antivenom. I wonder if I must just take that off my slide, because we can't get it at the moment. There's no stock, so I don't have much hope in that. They belong to the genus of Latrodectus, if you like fancy names, if you want to talk foreign. This is what our brown button spiders look like. This one's called Latrodectus geometricus, and the geometricus refers to the geometric patterns on the abdomen. All right. These are the ones that are in and around your houses. They make that little kind of pea-shaped spiky egg sac. So if you ever find a button spider around your house, have a look inside the web, and you'll see there's like yellowish or like whitish yellow egg sacs, and they look like little kind of peas with spikes on them. All right, so very characteristic. Our black button spiders have smooth egg sacs, so that's an easy way to tell them apart. Spiders that live in webs are adapted for life in webs. They've got a special third claw which allows them to walk in the webs, but it makes them very unadapted for walking on the ground. All right, so these spiders never leave their webs. You'll never see a button spider walking along the ground unless it's been forced to by something, whether it's been kind of swept out by a feather duster or it's been put there by someone. Okay, so to be bitten by a button spider, you've got to put an extremity into the web. So it's normally hands and feet, normally arms and hands, let's say. So that's where we see the majority of the bite. Being bitten by one is like being stung by a wasp. So there's that immediate localized pain, and people look down and see the spider. So we've got that great correlation between a patient that's been bitten by a button spider and the actual spider itself. We don't have that correlation with the other species. Do we have lots of bites from button spiders? We actually don't. And I'm surprised because they're very common in and around the urban environment. You know, the brown button spiders are, but the black ones aren't. Not really. This is the sac spider. This is the one that's probably in all your houses. If you open the windows you don't normally open, you know those windows you never open? Go home afterwards, okay, and open that window, and you'll see little sac-like retreats of silk. Okay, and this is where these spiders live. There are other spiders that make little sac-like retreats that look like they're retreats, so don't freak out if you find silk. Okay, they've been living there for a long time and they've never bothered you. These have got cytotoxic venom. They're a nocturnal spider. They don't make a web. What they do is they leave their shelter and they go running around looking for things to eat and looking for females. You know, the males are looking for females. And they might walk over you while you're asleep. You might move at that instant they walk over you. You might get bitten by the spider, and you might also win the lottery. These are lots of bites, lots of mites. Okay, so, but the problem there is the patient normally doesn't see the spider bite them. They wake up in the morning with what looks like a very bad mosquito bite, and it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. So when it comes to the spiders like this, we don't have a very good concrete correlation between the spider and the symptoms. It's far more circumstantial, which I'm going to talk about right at the end. It's only one spider which falls into the sac spider group. And I know there's a big question mark about is it medically important or not. There's a big question mark. So far, it's just speculation. We don't have the science to say it's not. We've got the science to say it is medically important, although it's dated science. Then we've got the infamous violent spider. Anyone been bitten by a spider here? Awesome. Okay, we've got a whole table. They seem to be congregating together. What kind of spider was it? Was it a violent spider? No idea. I like that. I like that. No idea, which is great. I'm going to talk about that as well a bit later. Our violent spiders don't have a very characteristic violent shape marking on the carapace. Okay, they occur in a number of different kinds of habitats. We've got one that live in caves. We've got a couple of species that are quite common inside people's houses in certain areas, and we've got other species which live underneath rocks and logs, places like savanna. All right. So we've got lots of different kinds. They belong to the genus of Loxosceles. They've got cytotoxic venom, so it's cell-destroying venom. We do get a lot of reported bites from violent spider bites, but there's no correlation that it's actually a bite. Then the last one is the six-eyed sand spiders. According to medical research, kind of dated medical research experiments with rabbits, they are medically important, but we just don't get any bites in humans. It's very rare to get a human bite. So we don't quite understand, the relationship between their bites and our physiology. But it's an interesting concept that they are medically important. There's so many non-medically important spiders out there. There's a lot more. And these are the common ones I think that you'll probably notice in your garden and in your house. We've got bark spiders and trapdoor spiders and baboon spiders, social spiders, horn baboon spider, long-jawed water spider, spiky field spider, wool spider, cork-leg trapdoor spider, golden orb-web spider, and a velvet spider. All right. They're not going to do you any harm. They'll try and avoid you as much as they can. It's good to have them in the environment. I think it really is. We need them. When it comes to spider bite misdiagnosis, it's rife. I'm involved with the National Poison Information Helpline, and 80% of the calls are about spider bites. There's no evidence the spider is involved at all. Now, the good news is, if you've got some kind of lesion which may be caused by a spider or may not be caused by a spider, the treatment is the same, right? It's going to be about wound care. It's going to be about looking after the wound and preventing a bacterial infection. That's really what it's all about. And here's a few examples of things that can cause spider bite-like symptoms. And lots of different things that are largely unrelated. So just be very careful of that. Please don't inform the patient it's a spider bite unless you've got some evidence. Scorpions is pretty simple. It's the red ones that you need to be careful of. If it's red, it's going to kill. No, I'm just kidding. There's a lot of stories about scorpions. How do you identify a highly venomous scorpion? And I know we want that like one piece of golden information that's going to save ourselves from ourselves, but it isn't that easy. There's about 150 species within Southern Africa. I think they're super recognizable. They're surprisingly common. I bet you've all got them. If they're not in your garden, they're probably within 100 meters of your garden. If you want to have a really good night out, bottle of good red wine, a UV torch, and a forested area, and you're going to find lots of scorpions living up in trees. They occur throughout Southern Africa. There's only a few places where we don't get scorpions. It's the high mountain peaks of Lesotho, where it's very, very cold, and the intertidal zones. We don't have scorpions that live in water. Okay, that's an insect. It's called a water scorpion, but it's an insect. We've got the longest scorpion in the world that gets to about 210 millimeters, and they're in the northern parts of the Kruger Park. They're also the world's least venomous, so they don't use their venom to be able to defend themselves. And according to the World Health Organization, only about 5% of scorpion stings require medical intervention. And I honestly believe that within our kind of area, it's a little bit more than that, because of the species that we have and the correlation of highly populated areas. So I think it's probably more 7 or even 8%. But it's a very small percentage. But the burning question is, if you get a patient stung by a scorpion, what do? Is it medically important or not? And that's a very, very good question. So we have something called the venomosity rule of thumb within Southern Africa, and it applies to all scorpions. There's a bit of artistic license with a couple of species, but it's actually very reliable. Scorpions with big pincers and small tails are weakly venomous, okay? Doesn't mean that absolutely nothing is going to happen, but it's like an itch. So it'll sting you like a pinprick and an itch for a couple of minutes. Then we've got some scorpions which have got which are moderately venomous. They cause almost like bee sting-like symptoms, maybe a little bit more than that. And then the ones to watch out for are the ones with small pincers and a very thick tail. Okay, let's just go through them once again. Let's have a closer inspection at them. So, large pincers, very, very thin tail. Just think about that. small to very large. There's no specific coloration. It's not like the red ones are more venomous than the black ones or anything like that. These are very shy and very reclusive. They enjoy these rocky areas, very common in certain environments, probably around your home. Here's just a bit of a close-up of what they look like. Can you see those beautiful eyes? They look like puppies' eyes. They've got 8 eyes as well. The eyesight's not very good. They only see one color. If you've got rocky outcrops in your garden, you'll find that there's cracks. Thank you. You'll find that there's cracks in the rocks, and some of the cracks are cleaned out. Like there's no leaves that have fallen in. If you find millipede rings that are scattered at the edge of the crack in the rock, there's definitely a scorpion living there, and that's what these ones are here. We've got the moderately venomous scorpions, so it's like a medium-sized pincer and a medium-sized tail. Once again, absolutely no coloration. This is a few nice close-ups. If we have a look at some species, this is one of the local ones that you have here. It's called Opisthothalamus glabrifrons, which sounds terrible. And the highly venomous ones to watch out for have got small pincers and a thick tail, and they're larger than 40 millimeters. Think about that. If you have brandy and Coke, what happens? Not much, because it's brandy. If you have brandy and Coke, what happens? Completely different effects. So the more brandy goes into you, the more profound the symptoms will be. So the more venom that goes into you, the larger the scorpion, the more it can inject. Small pincers, thick tail, larger than 40 millimeters, the patient will probably need some kind of medical intervention. And here's just a few close-ups again of what they look like. This is Parapithecus transvolvicus. This is the one you need to be careful of. Thank you. And this is Parapithecus granulatus, our most venomous one. You see we've got a distribution there. Traditionally we've had antivenom for it. That's Parapithecus transvolvicus, and you can see it comes just to the top of Eswatini. And then there's one from Namibia. They're all large species and highly venomous. This is the one that normally comes into contact with people. It's a small scorpion. They come into contact with people because they don't make permanent shelters. So they're very mobile in the environment. When we look at, when we start to look at the number of species that are highly venomous, mildly venomous, and moderately venomous, we can see that only about 16% of scorpion species are going to be highly venomous. And I think that this really accounts for the only 5% of stings need medical intervention. But if you get stung by the wrong one, it can be a very traumatic experience. And here we've got a map of what I call high-risk areas. So these are areas inhabited by highly venomous scorpions, large in size, so larger than 40 millimeters. So that's just really gives us a good indication. When it comes to centipedes, I know there's a lot of cultural references, right? Who's afraid of centipedes here? Okay, more than spiders. You guys must man up. All right, they're culturally significant, aren't they? What stories do we have about centipedes? There's probably lots. No one's going to tell me now. There's not enough time. But we don't have any medically significant species within Southern Africa. The Poison Information Helpline's got 12 records of centipede bites ever. So there's no kind of science which really kind of shows us any kind of trend. However, I did find a paper in Australia which was an overview of bites in Australia, which I think pretty much mirrors our situation here. So, let's have a look at what was in it. 44 confirmed centipede bites and 4 ingestions, so 4 people ate a centipede. These are Australians, by the way. And only 14 were actually identified. It sounds about right, to me. 13 occurred on the hands and feet, which makes a lot of sense, people standing on them or people picking up objects where these things were hiding. 57 occurred indoors and about 50% at night, which isn't statistically important at all. So it's pretty much random as far as I'm concerned. Pain, localized pain in 14 cases, a bit of swelling, a bit of itchiness, but no systemic events. So no systemic effects at all. So it's all localized. So it's going to be pain management and probably a lot of psychological trauma if you're in Eswatini, because you think a man might become a woman or something like that. That's what people have told me. Treatment really consists of pain management, as I say, and ice packs. That'll help. So just to finish off, we're talking about venomous animals, and it almost gives us the idea that the scorpion is responsible for all the factors, all the symptoms. But it's not like that. It really, really isn't. And I want to use this as a good idea. So we've got a scorpion there, right? So if the same scorpion stings these patients, what's the outcome? Will there be different outcomes? Vastly different outcomes. Why is that? Because they're different kinds of patients, right? So what I like to think, right, when it comes to scorpion envenomation, and it's the same thing with spider bites, and the same thing with centipede bites, and also snake bites, is that there's 4 factors that influence the symptom severity, I call it. There's going to be the animal-related factors, so how venomous is that creature? There's going to be patient-related factors. Okay, is it a 6-month-old child? Okay, or is it, I don't know, like a really old person? Okay, because there's going to be comorbidities, there's going to be lots of differences there. The situation is also different. So if people stand on a scorpion, the scorpion injects more venom than if there's a scorpion inside a shirt. Okay, and we see that with all the records from the Poison Information Hotline and response-related factors. Did the person put a tomato on the sting? Did they rub aqueous cream with a crushed Panado? Did they drink alcohol? Did they drink petrol? Did they electrocute themselves for a spider bite? Okay, and these all influence the outcome. Just a couple of things before I go. I'm just going to end off here. There's some free resources on my website. This is just to kind of pique your interest. There's a whole lot of medical PDFs on there. Okay, so this is the literature that if you want to know a little bit more, go to that webpage and download the PDFs. There's spider bite PDFs, there's scorpion sting PDFs, and there's some centipede bite PDFs as well. And these are really, really good resources. There's also a link to a free online course on the website. So, we're going to give away a book. Okay, let's actually give it away right at the end. Okay, so I do have a couple of books for sale if anyone's keen. But I used a bit of the book content to create a free online course. 10 short modules, a 50-question assessment, and if you pass, you get a certificate, because we all love certificates, right? Yes, we do. All right, I would recommend that you go onto that course and just work through it. It'll be a huge benefit to you. There's a poster somewhere over there, which is an overview of scorpion sting first response. And any questions, well, you can catch me during the break, but there's no more breaks, so that's about it. But I'd like to give away a book, please.
Okay, so it's your lucky day. You're going to link what are on, and then so you've got like 5 minutes. You can play.
Oh, 5 minutes.
Yeah, play.
Got 5 minutes. Give away books. Who wants to win a book? Okay, then I have to ask a question, right? And I know it's late in the day, but try and put your brain into gear. I know it's probably been in neutral, and you're thinking about, I mentioned brandy and Coke, and all of a sudden you're thinking about it because it's Saturday night. All right, so I'm looking for 5 examples, 1 example from each person of a traditional scorpion sting first aid technique? Okay, who's got one? Okay, go for it, yeah? Ice, okay. Is that a traditional first aid technique for scorpions? Okay, so it's either put in your brandy and coke or put it on a scorpion sting. I think it's a bit of a toss-up. Yes, dear? Those shocking devices, yeah, those electric devices for arthritis. You know how many people do that? A lot of people. You'll be amazed how many people electrocute themselves, even with cattle prodders and things like that. Another example, yes, Arno? Activated charcoal. Now we're getting somewhere. What else? Let's have something from the back tables. Okay, the blue people. The blue, yeah, stop looking at each other. Someone give me an example. Urine, yep. Okay, at the back there. Sorry, someone use? Sanitizer, okay, all right, yeah. Insecticide. Why would people think insecticide works? They drink it for snake bites. Jeez, okay, holy cow. All right, I think I'm going to give it to the insecticide lady. I know you've already got a book, haven't you? Would you like me to give it to someone else? Okay, one more. I need one more. Yes, yes, sir. Anything antiseptic? Okay. Yeah, no one said urine or milk or cow poo or I don't know, something. Breast milk. No one said that, which I'm quite disappointed in. Okay, I think I'm going to give the book to Tia. So you can keep it in your reptile center and you can use it as a resource. So if anyone wants to have a look at it, they can read through it. All right, thanks very much. Have I got some more time? So there's a whole world out there, and I think when it comes to our values and beliefs towards the environment, spiders, scorpions, and also snakes are the furthest point of our disconnection from the natural world. You know, it's never been more important to understand the natural world in an authentic way. And this is the only way we're going to be able to treat patients in a far more authentic or far better way. What I've discovered with the work that I do is that if people are afraid of spiders, they are the same people who believe in misinformation in the old wives' tales. Okay, and if we can just get over that fear, just knowledge is power, learn a little bit more, we're going to learn to treat patients in a far more authentic fashion, which leads to much better outcomes. Thank you very much.
So mine is very easy. I need to say thank you for giving up your Saturday and being with us. Give yourselves a round of applause. I know it's been a lot of information. It's been like the whole day. You've got our numbers. Talk to us. We're here. If you are in the health system and you have your patient, give us a call. We'll guide you and mentor you through that. If you're here because you wanted to know more about snakes and how to be snake safe, give us a call when you have that snake that's in your vicinity and you are ready to or not ready to and you need some help. Okay? I want to thank the panel for your enthusiasm and your bad jokes. I want to thank our sponsors for being here, for supporting and getting this event going. I want to thank Tia for, I don't know if you've slept for the past month or so. Thank you for 15 years of putting this symposium together. Can we give her a round of applause? And last but not least, I want to thank, there's only a few of them, but the team at the back and these two here that have been running around trying to have us fed, watered, and snake safe the entire time. before we, as we get the snakes out and ready, I just want to wish you a safe journey back down the Malaguan for those of you that need to go down that way. Have an awesome weekend, the rest of it that's left, and just keep talking to us. Keep that dialogue open. Thank you.
While we bring out the snakes, there are a couple of questions I just want to address. Sorry. Are black mambas territorial? The basic question is yes. They can live in the same location for 10 to 12 years. If you don't mess with them, they won't mess with you. And they live in that territory. They've got a 1.8 kilometer radius that they hunt. So if you can't say to me, I saw a mamba here yesterday, please come find it. Where would I find it? Okay. So yes, they are territorial. There was a question about AV banks in the Manzini area. Yes, we do have one. Then there is, how early should we implement physiotherapy for cytotoxic snake bites that has complicated to necrosis, needing debridement, skin graft, especially in limbs and of children?
Physiotherapy is very important. Problem is, in the beginning, it's very painful. So splinting, especially if the bite and the necrosis over joints, is very critical. So you get them in as early as you can so that they can splint them. And over the few days, as the treatment progresses, then they can slowly start to move. But get them in early. Don't wait 2 weeks, that's too long. Don't wait a week, they already start getting contractures. So the aim behind it is to prevent contractures. So if you can refer day 1 or 2, then sharp. Yeah, so you can do it even before debridement, get them involved. Look, they'll assess and decide how much they can do and can't do. So if they feel like they can't do much, that's fine, but get them involved early. The problem is always getting them involved too late. So
I'd also like to emphasize, as far as first aid is concerned for cytotoxic bites, we do not recommend a pressure bandage or a tourniquet. Instead, we recommend you elevate and gently just keep on moving your fingers until you get to a hospital. Please don't do this with a black mamba bite. Okay, I'm talking cytotoxic bites. So the Mozambique spitting cobra, the puff adder, the stiletto snake, night adders, elevate and gently flex. We've seen a huge improvement on the outcome of bites if you move that venom away from that little digit. Okay, thank you. The next question we have is, what is your experience with onset and antivenom and an allergic reaction? It's pretty common. It was especially, it was a huge problem when we were using SAVP. We saw up to 50% of the people having a reaction to the antivenom. With the new antivenom that we're currently using, it's very rare. It's about 2-3%. And as Lindalwa explained, not really very serious. First aid response in kids, elderly, to be the same as adults? Yes, very much so. There's no need to change the first aid response if it's a child or an adult. Okay. Venom is venom. Snakes don't understand if you're pregnant. The story about if you're pregnant, you have to cross your legs and wait for somebody to come and catch the snake. These are all myths, and they're very harmful myths, because that very often leads to a pregnant woman who has been bitten by a snake too afraid to go to a medical facility for treatment. We've not seen it once and twice. Bongi and I were running around looking for a pregnant lady who came into the clinic. She recognized somebody and she ran away. She didn't want the stigma attached that she was pregnant and she had been bitten. This is so harmful. These harmful beliefs we need to totally get rid of in Eswatini. They're hurting people. And then the last question is how many, I think she means how many vials of antivenom for a horse? Sorry. Okay, so it depends on how many species are in that particular vial. They'll use a horse per species. Okay. Any other questions before we bring out the nyogas? Yes, sir. Oh, how much venom do they use? Okay. Oh, God. I've got no idea. I can't answer that question. Chris, can you, how much venom do they inject into it? We don't know. Sorry, I've got no idea. I've got no idea.